sure you talk to so many early stage founders now, right? Like, what's the most common advice you give to them?
The number one thing that I do try to tell people is you should go for enterprise as soon as possible, or if you can do it out of the gate, you should just do that. And so sometimes we'll be selling to companies and then I end up getting to know the founders and they're like struggling because there's competition or like they're struggling because of some other reason. And my answer is always like, you need to go straight to enterprise. Like if you sell to a lot of startups, you do end up getting a lot, like you just get a lot of inbounds and a lot of like questions, and like it can help you a lot in the beginning because you get momentum, you can get really hot logos, and your product ends up becoming better because those startups usually have better taste, but like it's just so much, it's a way better and easier life. And a lot of times for these companies, they're creating new categories where there is no competition in the enterprise.
Yeah.
And so if you go straight to the enterprise and you're the only company there, it's like magical and it's really hard for someone else to get there.
I am so thrilled to have you with us today, Shensi. I was reflecting back to when we met. We met at a really bougie VC event.
We did.
Like
I forgot
3 years
about
ago
that.
at the US Open.
Oh, I want to get invited every year.
And the reason I remember you particularly is we had a chance to meet Andre Agassi, which was like so cool. And you like asked a question, and I was like, "Who is this boss bitch who's asking Andre Agassi a question?"
I don't go to events and not read the book. Obviously, I just read his book and I really wanted the tea. And so I had to ask him.
And I remember that. I was like, Shensi. It was so awesome. And anyways, I loved how we met. And obviously since then have been following you and Merge's growth this whole time here in New York City. Our offices are literally like across the street from each other. And I just see you everywhere, obviously on like LinkedIn and pods and all your hot takes. So thank you so much for being with us today at the drafting table. Okay, so I guess just from context, right? So you started Merge in 2020. And since then, you've raised over $75 million in funding from world-class investors like Excel and Ye and others. Your team is now hundreds of employees. And just yesterday, you said, you shared on LinkedIn that you guys closed the largest bank in the world. Drum roll. Huge congrats.
Yes, it was definitely traumatic on the way there, but we did it.
Yeah, so we're going to have a lot of hot takes about enterprise sales and all your learnings. So most of my guests on this pod actually are operators, and I ask them, what do you think founders should know before they start a company? And the reality is like, you're not going to know everything. Like you're going to learn so much on the job, but I think it's so unique. You're a founder in C right now at a fast growth company, so I'm just so curious, of all the things that you think about. Like, what do you think is the one thing you wish you had known before you started Merge?
Yeah, I mean, on the note of closing the biggest bank in the world, I wish we knew to start with enterprise sooner. And I also wish that we had started a product that could go straight to enterprise. But ultimately, because Merge is infrastructure, we just couldn't do that. We had to start with small startups. And it taught us a lot. We had a better product because of the data points from working with small startups and also startups that were very demanding. But yeah, I think it's a much easier life to go straight to enterprise.
Fascinating. Okay, and this is like truly like, I feel like the thing everyone needs to hear. So we'll break that down. Well, maybe let's start from the beginning, right? And I've heard a lot about the Merge story, but just for the audience, of how you and Gil got together, how you guys found the pain point, and so much of what we talk about with early stage founders is about customer discovery, right? Or user discovery and finding the pain point and then finding where to focus and how to build a product. So we'll love the 101 on how you all did that.
Yes. So Gil and I were both working at startups in San Francisco, and we would get dinner all the time. When I actually moved to San Francisco from New York, he helped me find my apartment. He'll help you get my car. And so we would just like get dinner and talk about work. And I think from hearing about what was going on in his company, and it was a similar problem at my company, it was something that I was really interested in. And we were just noticing that not having integrations was really starting to impact both of our businesses. From a top line perspective, because we weren't able to sell deals just from missing integrations, and from building the integrations, it was very painful for our engineering team and also very expensive to hire the engineers to support it. So I think just from doing a ton of research and talking to people, we did a lot of cold outbound. Back then you had to meet with people in person, and just hearing across the board, it was a big problem for everyone, and everyone was willing to spend money to find something that would fix it.
And I think that's so cool is that it sounds like, again, given your personal experiences, but like right off the bat, you heard, okay, this is a problem. But I guess what was the double click there to be like, okay, let's build the product that actually solves a problem?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're actually going through it right now since we're building a second product. It's not enough to just be like, oh, okay, like some people might buy it. Like some people might think it's like, kind of interesting. Like we really need to see like, okay, is this like a complete blocker for like their current day to day? And is this something that's really causing a lot of frustration? And how much would you spend to have someone that would fix this
Would
for
you pay for this?
Yeah. it's not enough for them to be like, yeah, I would try it. Like, it's really like, would you put money behind this?
Yeah. And how did you avoid the whole like trap there, right? Of like, yeah, this is cool, or like worry, like people who are just like don't want to hurt your feelings, right? Like, were there certain questions you guys honed in on that you're like, okay, this is like truly the person who's actually going to buy versus others who are just being friendly?
Oh, yeah. So many people would be like, oh my God, this is a great idea. Like, you should totally do this. And yeah, we were basically just like, okay, would you actually spend money? We're going to start this company in a couple months. Would you actually pay us money? And then you get the real truth. So I think you have to be very direct about whether or not someone would use it. And I mean, so our second product that we're planning on launching soon, we had many customer calls and it had to change a lot. We knew what problem we wanted to solve, but the way we solved it had to change a lot. And the first few calls we had, like people were definitely like, yeah, I don't know if I would pay, but I'd try it out. And then we knew it wasn't the right solution.
Yeah. Or did you know if it was not the right solution for that customer? Because I also think there's like so many segments of which, and we'll talk about this, right? But like the segment for who you're trying to go after. Because again, a tool for a large enterprise might not make sense for a small business. Like, did you have a sense, hey, let's at least start where we can just get early traction?
No, I think here we knew this was exactly the kind of customer we wanted there. And they were really nice to us. And then they were also just like, oh, I don't know if we would like spend money on this right now. So it was helpful for us to hear that. So unfortunately, you're very nice, but that was not what happened.
I was like, maybe if you just like pivot it a little bit, yeah. And I'm sure you talk to so many early stage founders now, right? I'm sure so many of them come to you and you're like, Shensi, I'm trying to, get off the ground. What's the most common advice you give to them?
The number one thing that I do try to tell people is you should go for enterprise as soon as possible. Or if you can do it out of the gate, you should just do that. And so sometimes we'll be selling to companies and then I end up getting to know the founders and they're like struggling because there's competition or like they're struggling because of some other reason. And my answer is always like, you need to go straight to enterprise. Like if you sell to a lot of startups, you do end up getting a lot, like you just get a lot of inbounds and a lot of like questions and like it can help you a lot in the beginning because you get momentum, you can get really hot logos and your product ends up becoming better because those startups usually have better taste, but like it's just so much, it's a way better and easier life. And a lot of times for these companies are creating new categories where there is no competition in the enterprise. And so if you go straight to the enterprise and you're the only company there, it's like magical and it's really hard for someone else to get there.
Dude, this is like the fucking best that you're saying this. And I swear we did not pay you to say like all these great things about enterprise, but like truly like the drum we've been beating for like 10 years, right? And I guess, the big reason I think a lot of founders don't go straight to the enterprise, one, it is very daunting. It's a really long sales cycle. I think there's things about it, even that we've learned over the years at Workbench, which is like SOC 2 audits and POCs and RFPs and MSAs. These are not things like the average founder knows.
Yeah.
I think it's all
the legal.
learnable.
Oh my gosh, the legal part. Yeah.
Procurement, right? And so, the reason we honestly like weirdly love it, I guess, in like a sick way is that I think it's very learnable. Like you do it a few times, you can definitely learn it, but it's not easy and every single customer will be hard. I guess the reason I think a lot of people don't do that is because one, I think they're scared of enterprise, but two, I think a lot of founders are scared of sales, right? And so you and Gil are both, technical. So what advice, even when you got past the customer discovery piece, right? And you're like, we're building merge. And you had to actually go out and sell the product. Like, take us to the earliest of days, like those first few customers, selling to them.
Well, the thing is, selling to startups is easy. I think selling to enterprise is hard. So we were selling to startups and it was other founders, and I can do founder sales like to another founder very easily. But when it comes to selling to selling to enterprise with someone who's in like, Oklahoma, it's much harder for me to be able to do that, especially since it's just a completely different type of sales process. But yeah, in the beginning, we were selling to startups. It was easy. It was like people we met through LinkedIn because it was during COVID. So we were just going on Zooms and meeting other founders. And so the first customer we ever onboarded was Drata. And at the time, there were 20 employees. They were still in stealth. And yeah, I just cold outreached one of the founders, and then we got on a call with Daniel, the CTO. He started talking about like his current problems, how he needed integrations, and he got to know me and Gil. Of course, it was also like a due diligence session. He wanted to make sure that we weren't dumb and just going to like sell out, and like we were actually going to have a product that he could rely on for a long time. But yeah, it was just a lot of outbound. I think if you're starting out, you just have to do a lot of outbound.
Yeah. And so and yeah, COVID was an interesting time, right? Because then you also like couldn't do in-person sales necessarily.
Oh, but that was awesome.
Which is great.
It was amazing.
You just get like...
Yeah, it was like 20 meetings a day. And you were just like back to back to back. You could learn really easily like what you were good at and not good at versus going in person. Like whenever I go to San Francisco or any other location I'm doing in person, you can fit like max 5 meetings because you're all over the peninsula. Like there's a ceiling for how many meetings you can take.
Totally. Okay. So the earliest of customers were startups, and it was not too hard. I mean, it is a bit of a volume game. Like you just got to like be out there. And you did say, I know in some, past interviews that some of these earliest customers were really great. They helped you like co-creating the product and so forth. And so then as you thought about moving up market, right, is that, I'm curious, like, was that a very deliberate decision? Okay, we've sold to a bunch of startups. I think we should probably go up market because of...
It was because we just knew that in order for us to get to become a like lasting standalone company, we needed to have bigger logos and we needed to have customers that were paying us more. And so we started off with this like companies that were under 50 employees. We only outbounded companies with under that size because again, we were infrastructure and we were really nervous about giving people a bad experience. And then over time we upped it to 200 and then we got some like 200 employee companies. Then we upped it to 1,000. And then now like below 1,000 is like our like smaller segment. But yeah, we just had to really slowly continue increasing what the employee size looked like as a proxy for how much volume and like what usage would look like from those customers. And the sales processes were different too based on that too.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you make it sound very easy, like, oh, we just kept increasing the headcount. But like,
yeah, no, it's not
along
easy.
along the way, you obviously, the product had to just like get more and more like hardened, right, to serve bigger and bigger customers. But I know for a fact that like the transition from the sales process and even the sales team requires a lot of work, right? Because the rep who sells to startups is not, unfortunately, always the same rep that sells to like a much bigger customer. So were those very deliberate decisions, or did you say, hey, look, we'll keep a team reps working on this one segment. We'll have net new reps working on a different segment?
We had to change the whole company. So basically the entire go-to-market team had to completely change just because when you're selling to enterprise or you're at least open to enterprise, what you were doing before just doesn't work. So we had to hire a new CRO. We had to like move a lot of the old reps out. We had to hire new reps with some experience. Obviously, you make some mistakes with that too, because not all enterprise reps will be a perfect fit, especially if you're trying to move to the enterprise. But yeah, we had to switch the whole team. And then another really big change was the post-sales side. I think a lot of people think that just pre-sales changes, but post-sales, we had to hire enterprise customer success, and it's so different from what we were doing before.
I literally had a whole episode just on QBRs.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Because
I did just like I was always like I would never join a QBR, but the thing is we're not enterprise, we're a startup, so it makes sense. Like that's why like a lot of companies don't do QBRs with us, right? I just don't have time. I don't care about it. But like for our larger customers, we have to do QBRs because we need to show them this is what you asked us to do. This is everything we've done. This is how we're viewing the relationship. This is how much value you're getting.
All the value.
So yeah, it's so different, and there's so much better like. There's so much better relationship management than I am that it's really great that we got this new team. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. I'm so happy you said that because I think so much focus of founders are like, let's close the deal. It's like, ring the gong and then let's go back to like closing more deals, which is like also very important. But I'm like, post-sales, don't forget post-sales. Like if that is your like the whole marathon, like post-sales is still a huge part of the race.
Yeah. And it can like our post-sales team is the glue for our company. A lot of times like we'll launch a new product or a new feature and obviously it's not as enterprise grade, and because they're so good at their jobs they can make the customer experience much better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think again a really good QBR can also help inform a lot of the future roadmap, right? Hey, what are the customers saying? That is also just very hard to get otherwise, right? So okay, cool. Yeah, I truly love nerding out about QBRs. That's like an enterprise, like to me, I'm like to founders, I'm like, do you know about QBRs? Because if you don't, that's totally fine. But like, we should just teach you because there's like a whole process. There's a whole playbook, right? Okay, awesome. And so then any other learnings, again, on this transition on going up market? I think it's so hard. And I feel like you're distilling it down in a very like, succinct way, but all the processes have to change, all the people that has to change, the culture and the organization.
The product, and then also you have to go on site. So yeah, the product, we had to do a lot of things. Like there's a lot more customizability, security requirements are a lot higher too. We also had to make things everything's just different. Like before I was really focused on like a beautiful user experience and making it simple and like friendly. Now a lot of it's just like making it as adaptable for the enterprise use cases, and also just making sure scale is like you're investing in scale. So a lot of our team actually mostly focuses on our infrastructure, making sure that we can scale for our larger customers versus like features. It's a very different part of the product. But yeah, I mean the area that like has also changed a lot is we go on site all the time. Gil last year, I think he traveled 5 5 months out of the year. I was in San Francisco last week. I'm in San Francisco next week. But we have to go on site. It's such a really important part of relationship building. And for some POCs that you kick off, like you'd kill yourself if you didn't do everything you could to close that deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And how, and again, this slight, I guess, or this focus, how did the engineering teams take it, right? Where you're like, hey, like it's not about like the shiny buttons anymore. It's about the infrastructure.
We ended up having different kinds of projects for them. And a lot of it became more about like, wow, you get to work on projects like this that are much more focused on scale. And like you get to onboard really cool, like big logos that you've heard of before instead of mostly like startups. And like startups are still cool. We have a lot of really sexy logos that are startups, but it's kind of like different problems. Yeah, and so I think a lot of our engineers are really interested in like the engineering, and like it's a very interesting engineering product to build.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it's very technical, right? And that's really where I think you have the moat, which is otherwise harder when it's like if there's a lot of competitors in the space. Yeah. Okay, curious about marketing. Like I know we talked a little about sales, and we should dive more into like true enterprise sales, but even on marketing, top of funnel. I remember I think we like talked about that at the US Open. I was like, what are you doing on marketing? I was like, marketing can be so hard, right? For B2B.
Yeah. I mean, we're still early in our enterprise marketing journey. Zena, our VP marketing, she joined us last year and she's really changed the team around. She's hired her own people, but she's still very much in like her journey of like helping us move into enterprise marketing. Yeah. All of our marketing before was mostly startup based and just vibes. It was just like posting on LinkedIn and like word of mouth and referrals. And I mean, I think a lot of founders now are like, oh, we'll use LinkedIn and that's going to be great. And that definitely helps you up to a certain point. But once you're past 10 million, it always dries up. It just always dries up. And I think everyone thinks that when you're less than that, you're like, well, I'm getting so much momentum because of it. So that just can't be true. But you have to find other ways to generate pipeline. And so we've been investing a lot in like field marketing. We've been investing a lot in like other types of events, and also obviously like SEO. All of that's very important. So it's really like a whole drumbeat of like different ways to acquire customers that we've really been investing in.
Yeah, it's just totally different muscles. That's what it sounds like. It's
also multi-touch now. Like for enterprise, everything's multi-touch. Like marketing will touch like a company multiple times, then our SDRs will, and I will. Like it's just everything's multi-touch.
Yeah, it's truly like all hands on deck. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk through. We were talking before about this YC article about getting to, you said 5 million. Is that right?
Maybe it wasn't YC, maybe it was someone else, but I did see it on LinkedIn.
It was someone out there, a thought leader, talking about how to get to 5 million, and their advice was to sell to startups. Yes. And you had a very, strong reaction to that.
I think it's easier to do that, and I think you can get to a certain size from just selling to startups. And obviously, like if you're in YC or like some other accelerator, it's very easy to, or San Francisco, it's very easy to sell to other founders because you have tons of friends and like they want to try to help you out and you can buy their product as well. But if you want to have a moat and you want to have like an enduring company where it's a little bit of an easier life, I think you should go straight to enterprise. We've noticed there's just a stark difference in like selling to a lot of volume, like a high volume of startups where not all of them end up lasting for a long time. A lot of them are very demanding because they're onboarding their first customers, versus selling to large companies where there's fewer of them and they can pay you a lot more. It's just an easier life. And I think, every like the HubSpot CEO, like, Jason Lemkin, like everyone warns you like, oh, selling to startups is really hard. And I think people don't think about that when they're starting their company, but at scale, it really is really hard. And so like every time I see like a tweet about like how hard it is for HubSpot and like ZoomInfo and all these companies that sell to a lot of startups, it is really hard. So I very much admire them for getting to become public companies and doing that.
Yeah. And the reason why you think selling to startups is hard, again, it sounds like the relationships might be somewhat easy, but it sounds like serving them perhaps is like the hard part, right?
Yeah, the customer acquisition cost has to be really low because you're just not sure how long they'll last. They can also be very demanding, and so you have to make sure that the way you service them is cheap too. But like when you're first starting out, like every startup that onboards, you're going to do whatever you can to make them happy. And so obviously the way you service them is not going to be cheap. Like we literally would do everything for Drana, and when they were 20 employees, they'd be like, jump. We'd be like, oh my God, of course. So we would do anything, and we kept doing that until we got to like 100 customers. But after a while, it's just really hard to do that when you have a high volume. And especially if you start selling to startups, you do start having a high volume of customers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, I can't say enough like how this is such like music to my ears, because I mean, the irony too, I guess the flip side I would say is that like enterprise sales is also really, really hard. They're just different types of hard, right? And I think one of the biggest challenges early stage founders feel is they want to somehow show they have traction. They want to somehow show they have revenue. So again, they try to go after the easier customers. And even if they do want to go after enterprise, a few things. One is like, I think it's very hard to split focus. So it's like if you have part of your team selling to SMB, but then part of your team trying to sell enterprise, it's just so hard. You have such limited resources, right?
Yeah, and then also like, so we would jump when the first customer told us to jump. But if you are selling to an enterprise company, you're gonna do whatever you're gonna do. You're not just jumping,
jump and dance,
you're flying. Yeah, you're flying.
Yeah.
You're doing whatever, literally whatever they say. And so your product may only serve their use case, which is also hard too. So there definitely are pros and cons, but just I think it is, now that we have done both, it is a slightly easier life to go through.
Yeah, yeah. And how did you deal with, I guess, I think the biggest challenge, honestly, going to selling to enterprise is being able to stay patient, because it can be so long, right? And there's so many moments of doubt. And by the time you're entering the 4th month of the sales cycle or the 5th month, you're just like
5 months. That's it.
I mean, that's so fast. That's what I mean.
Fast.
But that's the beginning. That's only the beginning, right?
Yeah.
And you feel like this pressure to like, I got to show revenue somehow, right? So I feel like at a certain point, you do have to draw a line in the sand and say, I'm going to go enterprise and we're going to go all in. And it might suck. It might suck for a long time. And we might not see actually any numbers on the board, but we just have to have faith and believe. Like, how was that, you as a leader, but also like telling your team, like, we have to maybe like be patient?
I mean, we're not patient. So we haven't really solved that. But I think it is really encouraging. Like you give yourself a year, and a year even isn't enough. And so even when you get to the second year, then you can hopefully start showing more. And as you see every quarter, it starts increasing and increasing. And one metric that we found to be pretty helpful is also what percentage of your revenue is the enterprise. And for us, like that's continued to increase. And our team is also seeing like the impact of those logos on our company too, just like the amount of effort to service them, what kind of asks they're having. And because of that, it's been helpful. We've also tracked like number of tickets per customer by segment. And that has also been helpful for us to just see like how we're doing there. And we'll also do like NRR per segment. And by product line too.
Yeah. I love this. One of my guests also shared that in the early days when they had some of these bigger customers, it was actually really helpful to see a lot of support tickets, because it actually meant that like people were using the product, right? And like depending on it, right? Like actually the worst is probably when like you don't get any support tickets. It's like you don't even know if people
we're
are
not
using
there. We're way past that.
Exactly.
Yeah, we did actually hire. So we hired a technical support engineer who came from another company, and so at Merge, like because we're infrastructure, we get a ton of tickets. Like it's just a lot of tickets. Regardless, like no matter what happens, we're always getting a lot of tickets. And he was like. And I was like, oh, like, is this stressful for you? Like, we get a lot of tickets because we have like 20,000 customers. And then he was like, oh, honestly, this is a blessing, because the company that I came from had no tickets. And that was really scary. So this is really great to see.
Totally, right? And so it's a champagne problem. People are using it.
Yeah, that's what my mom says too, but I'm like, I don't know. I don't feel it right. I don't feel it right now.
I love that. Your mom as your board member, you're good. Okay, so getting that first enterprise customer, right? Because I think once you get it going, you have the first customer, you have the second customer, and then you have references, right? And then the third customer, in theory, gets a little easier.
It wasn't enough. It was like getting the first one wasn't enough. Getting the second one wasn't enough. Getting the third one wasn't enough. It wasn't even until like, I think like now, like this year, where finally we have like dozens of enterprise customers where it's starting to show. But yeah, even like the first few wasn't enough for us.
Yeah. And so can you walk through the first, I just think like even getting your first 5 enterprise customers, right? Like, and I'd love to hear the highs and the lows and the learnings.
Okay, so maybe this is TMI, but the first few that we closed were accidental. They came inbound, and then we just like, we're like, okay, how about a couple 100,000? They're like, yeah, sure. And it was all an accident. We didn't implement them properly. Like we didn't like do anything great with them. It was all an accident. Honestly, it wasn't like the best sales process, because we were used to selling to startups where we'd be like, oh, you sign up, get started, and just let us know and we'll upgrade you. And so those were accidents. And Some of them have obviously continued to stay on the platform, but some of them didn't have a good experience and they didn't know what they were buying. And so we made a lot of mistakes from that. So that's how we got our first few.
That is incredible. Inbound.
Which is not great though. It was 2021. It just wasn't like the best. And to be honest, I kind of regret having that, like not having a great sales process back then, but we just didn't know. And so now
it also gave you, I don't know if it did or not. Like, I'm sure maybe at some point you were always going to go enterprise, but I'm sure like forced it a little bit earlier for you to be like, hey, we should do this.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, honestly, we were really unsophisticated back then when it came to like thinking through like the different customer types and how it was going to be more nuanced. But yeah, I guess like the first few purposeful ones that we closed, I mean, we had to actively outbound all of those outbound. Like it was so, we had to use our SDRs, I had to do outreach, we had to meet them in conferences, we had to go on site. It was a lot of effort to get the first few, and they knew they were taking a bet on us because we were small, and we also had to build a lot for them. And so we said yes, and then we got the second one, and then the same thing happened again. We had to build a lot for them. We had to really ask them to take a bet on us, and we had to go on site. We did it again. And then we hired a CRO to really come in and help us and create a process around messaging. And it's funny because he came, so before he was there, we had like, we didn't really have slides. We would be like, oh, like, here's like, if you need slides, like we have some slides. And like, but we show you our product live. Like we'll just talk to you and we'll show you, we'll go live. He came and he was like, we need a deck. Like, what is this? Like, so he came in, we created a deck, and we show value in every single, we have an agenda. We show value in every single meeting, and we break down our product into different components to make it easier for people to understand. And it really works. And I was shocked because at first I was like, this is so boring. Who would sit through this? Like, I don't understand. But now over and over again, I've seen those slides save a save a deal where someone tries to go in too deep, too fast. And it helps us like keep the meeting going in the proper way. So he revamped our sales process. We started having POCs with customers. We started going on site more consistently. And then it's been like a year and a half, and now we have a process, and it's just like rinse and repeat. We just have to keep it going.
Yeah, you just got to execute. Well, 2 points on that. I mean, I always say with enterprise sales, like what I do like about it is like there is a playbook, and like, you know, you can tweak it accordingly depending on like what space you're in, etc. But like for the most part, it's like this is a methodology, and you really don't need to reinvent the wheel. You just really have to like stay quite disciplined.
It's so true. Yeah. It's so true. Yeah. Versus like ironically, with a lot of startups, it's a little bit different every single time. And because there's also just so many. But for enterprise sales, it's really always been the same.
Yeah. And so I love that part. And then the other part too that you just mentioned is, so I had Alex Rosenblatt, who's a former CMO of Datadog, on the show.
Oh, wow.
He was like the first go-to-market hire.
Famous.
He's amazing. He says, I should connect you guys in the future because I think like you'll really enjoy meeting him. But he also shared with Datadog, like they also like accidentally went enterprise in the sense that like their first enterprise customers like came to them and like dragged them and were like, you need to sell to us. And Datadog was all like, whoa, like I don't even know if we want to sell to you. Like it's so funny. But they eventually were like, okay, we're gonna sell these enterprise customers. And they also walk in, they just like be like, here's the demo. And like these enterprise customers like, I need a deck, dude. Yeah. And like even the reps were like, please give us a decks. I need enablement. I need overviews. And the team was like, it sounded like at least in the early days, we're like kind of resistant, like I don't think we should do that. It's not really our vibe. And then eventually they realized, oh shit, like if we're going to these banks, like these banks need decks.
They need decks.
Right?
They love a deck.
And they love a deck. And there's really good things about a deck, right?
Yes, and they love QBRs, as you mentioned.
They love QBRs, right? And the last thing I always say to our founders is like, I think banks are a little bit different. I actually think banks are pretty sophisticated in the sense that they've usually bought some type of software before, maybe from like bigger vendors, but they at least generally have some sort of procurement process. But there's a lot of companies where they might not have ever really bought software before, right? And so if that's the case, like you need to be the one to teach them like, hey, this is step 1, this is step 5, this is like all the things we need you to do on your end so we can like push this process forward, and not to assume that your buyers actually know how to procure software.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's true. Or maybe they're new to the company and they're not sure how to do it too. So yeah.
Totally. This is so great. Anything else you do differently on your journey?
But yeah, I mean, there's just so many things that can go wrong, and like you just learn a lot from that experience. But yeah, I mean, one thing that I think everyone just needs to know before they start a company, you're going to work a lot. So just get that Botox appointment ready.
Just set it up.
Yeah, get it ready.
Just put on the calendar.
Get it
ready. Okay, cool. What else is there to talk about? I mean, we talked about emergency sales. We talked about customers. Honestly, I can't get over. I mean, I'm just like so proud of you guys for like.
Oh, thanks. I know. Yeah, it does. I mean, it does take a really long time. Yeah. Yeah. That one we chased for a year and a half.
That's
Which
pretty.
it's not that bad. Honestly, not that
Honestly,
bad.
when you put it like
I know,
that.
but like, in tech, like so many things have changed, So in that time, it's tough. But it's actually great because I guess one thing from selling to that, like right now, everything is changing in tech so fast with AI. Like you just don't know how things are going to change in like 3 or 6 months. But if you are selling to enterprise, it moves a little bit more slowly. And so at least with that, like like, okay, I'm in the sales process with this big company. It's unlikely they're going to be disrupted and like have some huge pivot in the next 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is true. That is like
Versus startups every day, they're changing their minds about their roadmaps.
Yeah, they're in a slight like different universe that just like moves a little bit slower. Yeah, then you can ideally with the right sales process you can control that. Anything else? Again, I know you've like talked a lot about recruiting. You've talked a lot about customers. I think the sales thing is just like the number one thing we hear from so many startups, right? Where they're like, because again, you can build a great product and you have to, right? Like that's actually like table stakes.
Yeah.
But like the distribution piece
I know it's so important.
is so important.
People don't think about it enough. Yeah. But I will say, I think I've noticed a lot of, I'll talk to other founders who after the company gets bigger, they stop coding. And I just think it's so important for founders to continue coding because there's so much context in the code base. Like you can understand why things are taking longer than you expected. You can understand like why someone's having a bad experience. And I feel like I always get so much information from going back to the code base and just being, oh, like this is why people don't like working on this, or like, oh, this is why like things take so long whenever it's in like this part of the product. And if also I think it's good for you to show your team that you're still in the weeds. So Gil and I still code a lot. And this new product that we're building, we're building it.
That is so fucking cool. That is so cool.
But also now it's like so easy with vibe coding. It's so sick. Yeah. Oh, and that's another thing too. So I think right now that we've been learning is like there's so many different tools out there that can make your team so much more productive. And especially when it comes to coding, like there's so many tools, but people are still really nervous about using them.
Yeah.
And there is like a little bit of a jump when you're going from VS Code to Windsurf, like because you're just used to your flow, like you're used to doing what you're doing, and then you kind of have to be like, okay, today I'm going to try this new tool, and today I'm going to like adjust my workflow. And I think as a founder, if you're technical, you got to do it so you can at least like share with your team like, okay, this is how you can make yourself more productive. These are tricks that I've done, and really create the expectation across the board that everyone should be using AI. So yeah, Gil and I have been using we've been using all like the AI application products. But we did it for like an signature generation for a team, like so you could just write your name and title and then it's so fast. The barrier to entry is so low, like it's amazing. And with coding, we've just been like telling everyone like all the tricks that we've been learning from coding.
Yeah, it's actually so interesting to know because I feel like obviously on Twitter all the developers are like vibe coding obviously and testing all these tools, but then when I talk to a lot of our companies, like I think developers actually are still like maybe a little bit skeptical, and it actually requires like the CEO or the founder to like really like mandate it. And I love that you and Gil obviously are showing by doing, right? But like it has been interesting because I would think it's the other way around. I would think it's developers saying like I want to try this, blah, blah, blah. And it's actually not been the case for most of our companies.
Really not the case. And it's also so interesting because on Twitter, like the discourse is like, oh, everyone's vibe code, but really like you can do it very easily 0 to 1 when the stakes are low. And the new product that we're building, like I'll just like build this like whole fucking thing for me. Like I don't care. Nothing's gonna break. No one's using it. But with our existing product, we can't do that. Like it is too complicated and too high stakes. And if something accidentally broke, we'd get like that would be a horrible experience for our customers. But there's still like you can still get 30% like increased acceleration from using it. So yeah,
I think that's like so interesting. I mean, I think what I love about both you and Gil's story, and obviously you talked about how like Gil like tutored you on like coding in the earliest days. Obviously you're technical, but like refreshing you. But I think the biggest the reality of like the best founders we know is like even very technical ones is like they get really good at sales.
You have to. Gil is like the best salesperson.
So how did you and Gil get so good at sales?
So Gil is like the best salesperson, and he was really good. Like
just naturally,
he was naturally really good, and he was also head of engineering at a startup before. And when he was head of engineering, he would do some sales calls, and he would also talk through security. And so I think that experience was really good for him. And me watching him, I learned a lot from him. He was just really good at it. And so I just tried to emulate him. I got a lot of practice, and obviously the first like 100 calls. That was horrible. And then over time, you just get more and more practice. It's kind of like fundraising. Like you just have to practice your pitch over and over again. But yeah, with sales, like you're same things. And in recruiting, it's the same exact pitch over and over again.
Yeah. And, just to talk about pitching really quickly, and especially like selling to slightly different customers, it sounds like you've also had to adapt the messaging and the positioning of the product and the company, right? How do you feel about the competitive landscape, I guess, like having other competitors selling to startups versus like other competitors selling to enterprise?
To be honest, like it just doesn't matter, because if you're selling to enterprise, again, it's so hard to do that it just like you have to have your own angle, you have to have your own flavor, and your product has to be built for that for years. And if we're selling to other startups, again, like we're not going to be the cheapest and you can't be the cheapest and the best, and we're just not the cheapest. We're the best product. And that was actually something I learned from the Gong CMO. He was like, yes, like if you're going to see a lot of competition every single day, there's going to be a new copycat out there, and they're going to offer their product for free. And so you just need to be confident in your product quality and just understand that, like, yes, you are going to lose to competition in situations where pricing is everything, and you just have to be okay with that. And that really has been okay with us.
That's I think being able to hold strong on the pricing, because that's another thing. It's like in the earliest of days, it's very tempting to say, okay, well, I'll give a discount, right? I'll give a discount to close a deal. And like, I think some like discounts, right? Like to close deals, like fake discounts, like make sense, but you just have to be very, very careful.
I agree. I also think a lot of founders, when they start off their companies, they price too low. And it makes it harder for them long term, because then if there's competition, everyone anchors to them as the highest pricing. And so if you price too low, then you put a ceiling on what your pricing could look like.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else when you're talking to all these earlier stage founders now? I mean, I'm sure so many
actually don't really talk to them. I'm too busy.
Okay, yeah, I know. That's actually a bigger thing, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like so much of it is around, obviously, hiring. You guys have done such a phenomenal job on hiring and culture. Maybe like your one hot take on, because everyone's like put out there, like, obviously you want to hire the best. It's like, yeah, no shit, right? But like, how have you and Gil like really done that?
We're just super direct about, we have super high expectations. We are very demanding. You're going to work a lot, and but it's going to be really fun. So we're very direct about that. And I think that has helped us filter a lot of people out. And we also have interviewed so many people at this point. And because we still interview every single person, we just have a pretty good gauge of whether someone's going to be a good fit and successful at Merge. And one thing that I have noticed for some of my friends who do end up firing a lot, that means you're probably having an issue with hiring. So if you're firing too much or you're not happy with your team, then it starts with hire.
Yeah. That's incredible that you and Gil still at this point of the size of the company are interviewing every person.
I mean, we have to. It's the most important part. Yeah. Like not being happy with someone's performance, that ends up taking up 90% of your mental capacity. And it's so painful to have that it's better to just be happy with everyone.
Yeah. Is there one thing that you feel like is like very specific to Merge on hiring that you're like, this is like clearly like a Merge like hiring process?
You have to really want to be at Merge. Like whenever I see that there's a candidate that's interviewed with all these different kinds of companies, like big, small, like whatever, there's no way you're going to join Merge. Like if you're interviewing with Google, why would you ever join Merge? You don't know what you want. And so so actually more recently we expanded our recruiting team, and that was something that we actually didn't train the new recruiters on. And so we started having a lot of candidates who were interviewing with Google and then Merge. I was like, why are we even wasting our team's time on this? This person is clearly not going to join us. If they're interviewing with other Series B companies, then they kind of know what they want. They're looking for something that's a little bit like less risky, but still early, and where they think there could be upside. That is someone that we can win. But if they're looking at big tech, there's no way.
I know. I totally agree. And it's again like the whole, I said earlier, like maniacally disqualify, customers who are not good fit, but you also just like disqualify out.
Yeah. And your engineers could be coding during that time. So instead of interviewing, it's just a waste of their time.
Yeah. Okay. Your hot take on fundraising.
Yeah. So I have a few hot takes. I think you're going to meet a lot of VCs, and they're just going to have a point of view, and you can't expect to change their mind. I think a lot of times like VCs will be like, oh my gosh, I met this person and they changed my worldview, and like I will do anything possible to invest in them. Well, they probably already kind of had that point of view, or they liked a certain type of person, and you fit that mold. But I'm not going to meet someone who just like fucking hates me, or like hates like the area that I'm like working in, and is magically going to be like, oh my gosh, I want to invest in this company. Like that's just not going to happen. So you need to find someone who like ends up matching their worldview with where you think things are going. But definitely is a game. And like I think a lot of people who aren't from like the Valley, it's just hard for them to adjust to that. But there's so many resources online. Like everything's available online. Like what to say, what to do, how to respond to things. Like unfortunately, it's kind of like dating. Yeah, you can't email a VC every hour and then think that they're going to want to invest in you.
Yeah, totally. No, the principles are so alike, actually. And I mean, I'll even say it on my end as an investor, right? Like, we think a lot about it too, because it's like, obviously, there are just founders we're really excited about, but like, and we try to obviously like share that excitement, but we also have to like not be too desperate.
Yeah.
And like, you have to like kind of, I do think we have to like time a little bit. Okay, when do you respond? Like, just be a little careful. Like, and so I hate to say the word game, but it is, a process.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. One of my friends is a VC and he was like, oh, there's these founders that I keep emailing and they never respond to me. It's so hot.
It totally is. It's
I was like,
so
okay.
perverse, but it's
I
so
know,
true.
I know. But I will say one of the best emails, there's one VC who is so good at outbound.
Yeah.
And it's so, cause yeah, it's really, he'll just say like, I'm not a stalker, but I see that you're in San Francisco and I want to meet with you. And like, it's so like out there. I know it's so out there that I'm actually like, you know what? Like, I'll meet with you. After 10 emails, I was like, you know what? I'll meet with you. And then other things that are really helpful when VCs outbound are they're just like, okay, I understand how you're different from this other company that everyone thinks you're this, but you're just not. And that's also very helpful because like as a founder, you're just so used to everyone just like dumping on you and like people telling you like your product sucks, you suck, and like everything sucks. And then someone like external like firmly believing in you is very like it's very engaging and it makes you want to respond to them.
Yeah, and I think for them to see what actually sets you apart, right? I mean, that like for anyone, anything, like it's just like really, really special.
It's like dating.
It is like dating. You see me. You see what makes me me, right? Okay, awesome. So that's fundraising. I guess just like the last question is just like, I feel like I'm so proud just like watching you guys. I feel like such a cheerleader and like seeing you post on LinkedIn and seeing the team grow. But like, what are you what are you most proud of?
Yeah, I'm really proud of our team. Like we have a really, really great team. Everyone's so awesome. And it's really nice to be able to go to work and have a lot of fun and just be really proud that of what we built. Like we've really gone a long way since like day one of Merge, and it's only possible because of how amazing our team is. We were very lucky to have everyone.
Yeah, it's such an awesome team, and I love your New York City office with like the pizza. It's like the pizza parlor.
Oh yeah, shout out to Ilya from Slice. Yeah, he told me that when he moved into that office, they didn't do any renovations except for adding that carpet. And oh my God, he's gonna get so mad at me. But the first day I walked into that office, I was like, wow, this is a great space, so much sunlight, but I hate that carpet.
It's a very distinct carpet.
I know.
I mean, because it looks pizza.
Yeah, it's pizza. Yeah, but I love him, love the office, but yeah, that's the one.
But I do feel like it's very distinct because like I'm like, oh, this is very distinct,
Yeah, he has his mark on the office still.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, awesome. So if you were to fast forward through this episode, what do you think is like the one punchy takeaway that you'd want someone to hear?
Don't do it. I'm just kidding.
We're gonna start with that.
I'm just kidding.
End with that.
I'm just kidding.
I mean, it's so funny you say that because we actually, John and I, my co-founder, we get approached all the time, obviously by other GPs who are starting their own funds, and they're like, we want to start a fund. And I mean, the first thing I say too is also like, dude, you should go for it, but like you should also know like how fucking hard it can be.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Wait, I have a story. Okay, so yeah, like it's very hard, and I was in San Francisco this week and I was meeting with the founder of a big company that you've heard of, and he was telling me that last year 3 companies that he like purchased their products to like use in their product went out of business, and they had to scramble in like a month or two to like find new vendors. And one of them it was like a YC company. They started the company and he was like, okay, I'm gonna take a bet on you, I'm gonna use your product. And he was like, oh, I got a job at OpenAI, so I'm actually shutting down the company. He didn't even get acqui-hired. He didn't even get, like, nothing happened. He was like, I just got a job, so I'm gonna shut
well, also down. And get paid bank.
I mean, that's true, but they gave like 1 or 2 months notice, and then he was like, oh my God, that's horrible.
I know. No, I know. I mean, that's a real risk.
That's a real risk.
It's like
a real risk. But yeah, I mean, it's really easy to get funding right now, to be honest. Like, I think it's easy for a lot of seed stage companies to get it, and then they start a company and they're just like hanging out, they're networking. But yeah, like actually doing it is really hard. Yeah.
The one thing you have said, you're like, every phase is hard, it sounds like.
Oh yeah, every phase fucking sucks. Yeah. I thought it was going to keep getting easier, but then like I was at a dinner once with Jeff Lawson from Twilio, and he was like, yeah, this sucks. And I was like, damn.
If Jeff says that, no, it's like more problems, right? Every stage.
It's true, but he had a really good point where he was like, yeah, like every stage sucks, and then you just have to decide whether you want to adjust and learn and grow, and that's life. Or you can just give up and go back early. Like it's kind of, you can go both ways.
Awesome. And how can people find you online?
Yeah, you can find me at merge.dev, or you can just email me directly at shensi@merge.dev, or find me on LinkedIn.
Honestly, people should really follow you on LinkedIn because your posts are are so good.
Oh, thanks. Very
Keep
cringe.
going.
Thanks.
Keep going. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.